Chapter 8:18. What does a dagger inscribed with this character mean? Is it to kill this person? Qinbai slowly shook his head. He glanced at the dagger, then turned to Jingyu in confusion. How did you recognize this character? I read it in a scripture by accident. I thought it was interesting, so I memorized it, Jingyu replied swiftly. Her face didn't blush, and her heart didn't skip a beat. She spoke as if she were telling the truth. Qinbai arched his brows but didn't say anything. It wasn't clear whether he believed Jingyu or not. He brought the dagger to the pool they'd just emerged from, wanting to clean it. But the moment the dagger touched the water, it turned pitch black. A silver dagger? This pool is poisonous. Qinbai's expression changed. He looked up and saw that the blooming flowers on the stone wall had all withered. The pool was very calm, but it was filled with an aura of death. Yun Tian is forcing us into a corner. Qinbai slowly rose to his feet, his eyes cold as he looked at the pool. Qinbai naturally knew that it was Yun Tian's doing. The water had been fine just a moment ago. How could it have become like this in the blink of an eye? Who else but the poison sect could possess such a tyrannical poison? Yun Tian has sealed off our only way out. What should we do now? Qinbai turned to Jingyu, but when he did, he saw the unconscious Jingyu on the ground. Qinbai's pupils shrank in fright as he strode toward Jingyu. Jingyu! Qinbai raised a hand to check Jingyu's weak breathing. As soon as he touched Jingyu's skin, he felt a scorching heat. Qinbai raised a hand to touch Jingyu's forehead. The scorching heat caused Qinbai to furrow his brows. He turned to look at the pool, his eyes cold. There was no food or water. Jingyu had a fever. The only source of light was the night illumination pearl. Jingyu, wake up. Qinbai patted Jingyu's cheeks. Frowning, he took off his clothes. They were still wet. Qinbai wrung out the last drop of water on them and dripped it into Jingyu's mouth. Time slowly passed. There was no night or day here, and Qinbai had no concept of time. Jingyu's had leaned against Qinbai's thigh. Her eyes were tightly shut. She didn't move. Calm hunger and cold attacked her. Jingyu's consciousness became more and more blurry due to her high fever. After sleeping for an unknown period of time, Jingyu finally opened her hazy eyes. The first thing she saw was the rock above her head. Then, she felt something pressing against her forehead. Jingyu turned her head and saw an arm. Extending upwards, she could see Qinbai's handsome face. He was leaning against the rock with his eyes closed. His brows were slightly furrowed. Number 9. This scene was so familiar. It was the same cave, the same two of them, and the same dead end. It was so familiar that it was frightening. Their faces were exactly the same. Qinbai frowned and slowly opened his eyes. When he lowered his head, he saw Jingyu staring straight at him. Qinbai was slightly stunned. Then, he slowly removed his hand and said, "You're awake? Do you feel better?" Jingyu stared at Qinbai for a long time. Finally, she stared at Qinbai and said, "Why did you enter the forest? Why did you save me? Why did you approach me? Is it because of your different pupils?" Chapter 8:19. Jingyu stared intently at Qinbai, as though she wanted Qinbai to give her an explanation. "You are my fiancé," Qinbai replied after a moment of silence. Then he looked at Jingyu seriously. "Qinbai." Jingyu suddenly stood up and placed the dagger in her hand against Qinbai's neck. Jingyu's face was pale. She used all her strength to press against Qinbai's neck. Her eyes shone with an unknown light as she stared intently at Qinbai. "Tell me why." Jingyu gritted her teeth and looked at Qinbai. Her eyes seemed to be filled with tears. "You are not him." But why aren't you him?" "Jingyu?" Qinbai looked at Jingyu, who was suddenly so emotional. He frowned slightly and raised his hand to support Jingyu's shoulder. "Don't call my name." Jingyu threw the dagger in her hand. Because she threw it with too much force, it accidentally left a small scar on Qinbai's neck. A drop of blood flowed out. Qinbai stopped and looked at Jingyu quietly. "My name? You gave me my name. You gave it to me." Jingyu clutched her chest in pain. At this moment, The inner demon hidden in Jing Yu's heart seemed to have exploded. She couldn't control it, and the countless memories invaded Jing Yu's brain. Number 9. Number 9. Don't die. Jing Yu closed her eyes tightly. Don't be afraid. Qin Bai stepped forward and held Jing Yu's shoulder. Looking at Jing Yu's pale face, his calm heart suddenly trembled. Something different was quietly injected into it. Don't die. Die, why did you die? Jing Yu fainted again. She fell into Qin Bai's arms as if she was sleep-talking. She frowned and couldn't stop mumbling. Qin Bai looked at Jing Yu lying in his arms. His heart trembled again. This time, it trembled even more violently. You won't die. Qin Bai's pitch-black eyes flashed with a different emotion. He hugged Jing Yu a little tighter. His deep voice seemed to have a sense of calmness. Jing Yu's tightly knitted brows relaxed a little. Jing Yu, I'll get you out of here. Qin Bai's gaze landed on Jing Yu's hand. There was a ring mark on her middle finger. The 4 words on it made Qin Bai's expression change slightly. Qin Bai turned his head and stared at Jing Yu's face. There was an abnormal flush on her pale face. Qin Bai's gaze changed slightly. He raised his hand slightly and gently touched Jing Yu's cheek. A scorching heat came through, startling Qin Bai so much that he retracted his hand slightly. His hand paused in midair. Then, he continued to reach forward and touch Jing Yu's cheek. Perhaps even Qin Bai himself didn't realize how careful his actions were. His pitch-black eyes stared at Jing Yu for a long time. Finally, the corners of his mouth curved into a faint smile. Fiancé. Qin Bai squinted. He looked at Jing Yu as he said those 3 words. There was a distant tone to his voice. It was like he was murmuring out of curiosity, but it also sounded like he was very happy. There was a determination in his voice that was hard to detect. When Qin Bai called her fiancé, it was not as casual as it had been before. It did not seem to matter. This time, it sounded more like an oath. Jing Yu? Qin Bai's thumb gently rubbed Jing Yu's cheek. After a long while, he slowly withdrew his hand. He hugged Jing Yu and leaned against the stone wall. He looked at the top of the stone wall and narrowed his eyes. There was a deep look in his eyes. Chapter 8:20. A strong smell of blood came from her mouth. Jing Yu licked the corner of her mouth. It was blood. Jing Yu slowly turned her head and raised her hand to touch the corner of her mouth. Her fingers were stained with blood. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she turned her head to look. The hand that was hanging on the ground was wrapped in a strip of cloth. There were even faint traces of blood seeping out of it. And the owner of this hand? Qin Bai. Jing Yu suddenly sat up and saw the unconscious man leaning against the stone wall. His pale face and cracked lips shocked Jing Yu. You're awake. Qin Bai slowly opened his pitch-black eyes and looked at Jing Yu, whose complexion had returned to normal. His lips curled into a faint smile. He raised his hand to touch Jing Yu's forehead. It was no longer burning, but a normal temperature. Your fever has subsided. Qin Bai propped himself up and tried to stand up. However, he suddenly felt dizzy. Jing Yu quickly walked forward and supported Qin Bai. Her eyes darkened. Why? Jing Yu stared at Qin Bai. She lowered her head and her gaze fell on Qin Bai's wrist. A deep look flashed across her eyes. She raised her hand and grabbed Qin Bai's wrist. She pulled the cloth away and saw his wrist, which was riddled with cuts. Qin Bai, how much blood did you feed me? Jing Yu felt a sharp pain in her heart. Scenes from the past flashed through her mind. It was so shockingly familiar. You finally called my name correctly for once. Qin Bai looked into Jing Yu's eyes and slowly retracted his hand. He silently wrapped the cloth around his wrist and said, We don't have time. There must be an exit here. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to breathe and survive for so long. Jing Yu watched as Qin Bai turned around and walked around the cave. His tall figure and dirty clothes couldn't hide his elegance. That familiar face. He was doing the same thing to her. Everything was so familiar. But why was it like this? Qin Bai, who are you? Jing Yu stared at Qin Bai's back and asked in a deep voice. I'm your fiancé. Qin Bai froze when he heard this. He turned around and fixed his pitch-black eyes on Jing Yu. Qin Bai. Jingyu was about to say something when she suddenly heard a muffled sound coming from inside the cave. This sound seemed to be caused by a huge knocking sound. This sound was coming from outside. Someone was knocking on the stone wall. Over here. Qinbai obviously heard it too. His eyes lit up. After listening carefully for a few seconds, he quickly walked in a certain direction. Qinbai and Jingyu were standing in the innermost part of the cave. The muffled sounds were even clearer now. Pang! Many heavy hits sounded. It made Jingyu and Qinbai clench their fists. Back off. Qinbai raised his hand and shielded Jingyu behind him. His pitch-black eyes stared at the stone wall as if he wanted to circulate his energy to break it open. Jingyu looked at Qinbai's hand protecting her and her heart trembled violently. She looked at Qinbai's back and frowned slightly. Your hand? Jingyu looked at Qinbai's injured hand and wanted to grab Qinbai. However, Qinbai brushed her hand aside and said indifferently, "It's nothing. It's just a small injury." Jingyu stood in the distance and watched as Qinbai fiercely punched the stone wall. His fist seemed to be covered with a layer of glass. A deafening sound was heard and Jingyu's eardrums hurt. Chapter 821. Cough cough. Qinbai coughed slightly and waved away the choking dust. This stone wall was indeed extraordinarily hard. Even after such an impact, there was only a bowl-sized hole. Qinbai's face turned slightly cold as he stared at the stone wall with a solemn expression. Just as Qinbai stopped moving, there seemed to be a brief moment of stagnation outside the cave. Then, there was a frantic crashing sound. The crashing sound came one after another. Qinbai did not stay idle. He waved his fist and struck again. Jingyu covered her ears tightly. The loud crashing sound reverberated in the cave, causing people's hearts to tremble. Boom! After countless swings of his arm, the hard stone wall was finally thinned. Vaguely, they could hear voices coming from outside. "Master, don't hit anymore?" The voice was so soft and so familiar that it caused Jingyu's brain to short-circuit for a moment. Qinbai used all his strength to swing his arm for the last time. The stone wall produced a loud crashing sound and collapsed, causing dust to roll down. Jingyu stared fixedly at the slowly dispersing dust and listened to the sound of footsteps. Finally, the moment the dust dispersed, she saw the figure standing on the pile of stones. He was dressed in black and was covered in dust. His hands were covered in blood and injuries. Xiao Qin. At this moment, there was no one else in Jingyu's eyes. She only saw him. Xiao Qin's face and body were covered in dust. The cuffs of his clothes were torn. She could see that his arms were covered in dust and dripping with blood. There was not a single piece of skin on his arms that was intact. His face was filled with brutality and his pitch-black eyes were bloodshot. The thick aura of death in his eyes made Jingyu's heart palpitate. Xiao Qin raised his head to look at Jingyu. The living Jingyu standing in front of him and that familiar voice calling out to him made Xiao Qin almost stumble over. Using his scarred hands, he hugged Jingyu with all his strength. Xiao Qin hugged her so tightly that he almost broke Jingyu's bones. His trembling body and his cries of joy and sorrow made Jingyu's heart ache. She hugged Xiao Qin's waist back and buried her head in his chest. Suddenly, tears filled her eyes. Xiao Qin. Jingyu choked out Xiao Qin's name in a clear voice. I'd lost you. Xiao Qin hugged Jingyu tightly for a long time, then said deeply, Jingyu. Jingyu. Xiao Qin greedily sniffed Jingyu's scent. After so many years of tormenting emotions, when he heard that Jingyu might have been killed by the poison sect, Xiao Qin almost couldn't control his anger. It felt like a sharp knife had viciously gouged out a piece of flesh from his heart. The pain was so intense that he almost suffocated. How could this be? How could his Jingyu have died? He'd searched day and night for her, chopping down every tree in the forest and draining every drop of water from the pond. In just a few short days, Xiao Qin had spent every moment in torment. Every moment he missed her, every moment he blamed himself. Until now, when he saw Jingyu appear in front of him alive and well. The joy of regaining what he'd lost hit his brain and his heart. He hugged Jingyu tightly. He didn't want to let go of her anymore. Never again. Chapter 8:22. Qin Bai stood at the side, his pitch-black eyes silently watching the two figures hugging each other as if there was no one else around. His gaze fell on Jing Yu's face. He saw Jing Yu's relieved expression, her dependent expression, and the way she took the initiative to hug Xiao Chen. In that instant, Qin Bai suddenly clenched his fists. He actually had the urge to step forward and separate the two of them. A sour feeling brewed in his heart. Although it was a very slight feeling, it was enough to make Qin Bai panic and panic. Why would he have such thoughts? Xiao Chen was Jing Yu's husband. Their actions should be normal, but why would he be unhappy? Why would he have such a strange feeling? It was a strange feeling, and it made Qin Bai feel uneasy. He clenched his fists tightly, and when he felt a piercing pain in his palms, he suddenly sobered up. He calmly lowered his eyes and suppressed the strange feeling in his heart. He coldly raised his eyes and stared at Jing Yu and Xiao Chen, who had let go of each other. Tell me, where are you hurt? Where does it hurt? Where does it hurt? Xiao Chen's hands trembled slightly as he gripped Jing Yu's shoulders tightly. When he saw the bloodstains on Jing Yu's body, his eyes were filled with panic. His hands that were gripping Jing Yu's shoulders trembled violently, as if he wanted to hug her tightly but was afraid of using too much force. Jing Yu looked at Xiao Chen's appearance and her heart suddenly ached. The ninth emperors, who did not bat an eyelid in the face of death. But in front of her, he was as flustered as a child. He was so careful and panicked. It hurts. It hurts everywhere. I'm so hungry. Jing Yu looked at Xiao Chen with eyes full of grievances. Her words made Xiao Chen even more flustered. He was so flustered that he did not know what to do. He frantically said, "Where does it hurt? I'm hungry. I'll take you home. Let's go eat. You can eat whatever you want. I can't walk anymore. I want a hug." Jing Yu blinked her eyes and looked at Xiao Chen pitifully. She raised her arms and hugged Xiao Chen, hanging onto Xiao Chen's body. Without another word, Xiao Chen picked Jing Yu up and said, "Okay, I'll carry you." "Master, madam." Xing Er, who was standing outside the cave, walked up to her. Jing Yu looked at Xing Er. Indeed, the voice she had just heard belonged to Xing Er. "Your hand?" Xing Er frowned as he looked at Xiao Chen's scarred hand and said worriedly, "It's fine." Xiao Chen replied without any change in his expression. He lowered his eyes and looked at Jing Yu in his arms. The gentleness in his eyes was almost overflowing. If it could make her feel less pain, he was willing to give up his hands, let alone these superficial wounds. That person... Finally, someone's gaze landed on Qin Bai. Qin Bai also took steady steps and walked out from the stone wall. He stood in front of Xiao Chen and Jing Yu and looked at them with a slight smile. Finally, his gaze landed on Xiao Chen. When their eyes met, an invisible pressure filled the air. Ninth Emperors, our first meeting is really interesting. Qin Bai looked at Xiao Chen indifferently and lowered his head slightly. He instantly retracted his aura and looked at Qin Bai like an ordinary man, calm and gentle. "You, who are you?" When he saw Qin Bai and their eyes met, Xiao Chen's heart felt a sense of danger that he had never felt before. That sense of danger was very strong. Chapter 8:23. He is... Jing Yu turned her head to look at Qin Bai. She raised her eyes slightly to look at Xiao Chen and was about to speak. "I am Jing Yu's fiancé." However, before Jing Yu could finish speaking, Qin Bai interrupted her and calmly said those words. Everyone behind Xiao Chen widened their eyes in shock and disbelief. Silence. A deathly silence. "Qin Bai, will you die if you don't speak?" Jing Yu was about to explode as she glared fiercely at Qin Bai. "I was only answering the 9 Emperors' question." Qin Bai calmly raised his eyebrows. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he looked at Jing Yu and said, "Am I wrong? You still have the imprint of my ring on your finger." After Qin Bai finished speaking, Xiao Chen raised his hand to hold Jing Yu's hand. He looked at the ring-shaped imprint on Jing Yu's middle finger. The small words on it were so clear that Xiao Chen's expression changed abruptly. He turned to look at Qin Bai. "Qin Bai." Xiao Chen didn't let go of Jing Yu's hand. Instead, he gripped her hand tightly. He fixed his gaze on Qin Bai as the corners of his mouth curled up into a cold smile. His pitch-black eyes were filled with intense killing intent and anger. "How dare you touch this king's woman?" Xiao Chen's lips curled into a bloodthirsty smile. He stared at Qin Bai and said, "No matter where you come from, this king will find you no matter where you go. Wash your neck and wait. Today, since you saved you, this king won't kill you." As expected of the 9 emperors. When Qin Bai heard Xiao Chen's words, he didn't get angry. Instead, he laughed and looked at Xiao Chen calmly without saying a word. "Xiao Chen." Jing Yu gripped Xiao Chen's hand and said, "He is not a bad person. If it weren't for him, I would have died." Xiao Chen tightened his grip on Jing Yu's hand. When he heard Jing Yu speak up for Qin Bai, he didn't know why, but he suddenly panicked. Jing Yu looked up at Xiao Chen and fixed her gaze on Xiao Chen. She asked, "Do you trust me?" "I do." Xiao Chen looked into Jing Yu's eyes and his panicked heart suddenly calmed down. He raised his hand and stroked Jing Yu's hair. His gaze was gentle. "Qin Bai, I will repay your kindness. However, this so-called fiancé is just a joke. If you are bound by this mark, how about I return this finger to you?" Jing Yu stepped forward and looked calmly at Qin Bai. As she spoke, she raised her hand. Her words shocked everyone present. Qin Bai was also shocked by Jing Yu's words. His eyes widened as he looked at the woman standing in front of him with her hand raised. The face was still familiar, and the figure was still familiar. However, "Jing Yu, do you hate me?" Qin Bai stared silently at Jing Yu for a while before suddenly asking. "You saved my life. I am indebted to you." Jing Yu shook her head slightly and replied. "Ha." Qin Bai laughed and shook his head. He looked deeply at Jing Yu before turning his head to look at Xiao Chen. Finally, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he said, "In life and death, how can we rely on each other if we don't have the heart to rely on each other?" Qin Bai left these words indifferently. He turned and walked towards the side of the forest. His calm voice sounded as he said, "I am not indebted to you. Everything I do is of my own volition. I only hope that when we meet again in the future, you won't forget about me." Qin Bai walked away leisurely. Jing Yu stood in the same spot and looked at Qin Bai's departing figure. She suddenly had a strange feeling. She felt that Qin Bai's words contained a hidden meaning. Jing Yu frowned uncomfortably. Chapter 8:24. I owe you a debt of gratitude, but you don't. This is my debt of gratitude, not yours. Jing Yu slowly lowered her hand and smiled faintly. Only she knew what she was thinking when she said those words. Only she knew what she wanted to express when she said those words. Xiao Chen stood silently beside Jing Yu and stared at Jing Yu. Jing Yu looked up at Xiao Chen. "Xiao Chen." Jing Yu looked back at Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen looked deeply at Jing Yu and looked at her hand. Xiao Chen clearly felt that Jing Yu really wanted to cut off one of his fingers because of this so-called mark. "Aren't you hungry?" Xiao Chen raised his hand and touched Jing Yu's cheek. "Hungry? Very hungry. I'm going to faint from hunger." Jing Yu looked at Xiao Chen with a bitter expression. "You know you're hungry, yet you still talk so much. Aren't you tired?" Xiao Chen held Jing Yu's hand and said, "Let's go and eat something delicious." "Okay?" Jing Yu happily leaned on Xiao Chen, her eyes filled with joy. She leaned on Xiao Chen and walked out of the forest. Along the way, Jing Yu noticed the place they came out of. This place. It seems like, "Xiao Chen, how did you dig this place?" Jing Yu's face darkened as she looked at the forest that had been completely dug up. They walked out of the ground because the pit was very big and not deep. It was like walking uphill. Within a radius of 10 miles, the originally dense forest had almost all been cut down, leaving only a few sparse trees. It had to be said that the scene in front of them was quite shocking. "I'm just guessing," Xiao Chen calmly replied. Jing Yu looked around and saw that the entire forest had been dug into. "Holy shit, this is too awesome. Don't tell me you called everyone from the Nether Hall here to dig?" Jing Yu looked at Xiao Chen strangely and asked. "Yes." Xiao Chen calmly replied again. Jing Yu's eyes widened as if she had seen a ghost. She looked at Xiao Chen strangely and asked, Could it be that they all dug with their hands? It's faster this way. Xiaochen looked at Jingyu and said with a smile that seemed to say, "You're really smart." Jingyu staggered. At this moment, she was filled with admiration for Xiaochen. Inwardly, she mourned for the legendary Nether Sect elites. The great Nether Sect elites were called here to dig. Not only were they not allowed to use tools, but they had to use their hands to dig. This was terrifying. At this moment, the Nether Sect members thought, it's not easy to be an underling, but it's even more difficult to be a subordinate. The sect master had used the Nether token. The Nether Sect members had to obey unless they were dead. They had only seen the Nether token twice in their lives. The first time was when the old sect master used the Nether token to avenge his daughter. It was said that the heavens and the earth were shaken at that time. Blood flowed like a river. Since then, it was said that when the Nether token was used, piles of bones would be formed. However, this time, the Nether token was used to cut down trees and dig for the sect master's wife. What happened to the heavens and the earth? What happened to the rivers of blood that flowed like a river? What happened to the piles of bones that flowed like a river? They did see blood. Look at this pair of hands that were used to dig the ground. Blood flowed like a river. If they talked too much, they would cry. The people behind Xiaochen and Jingyu were disheartened. Xing Er's lips twitched. Only his master would do something like this. Naturally, his master would only do something like this when it came to Jingyu. Chapter 825. It's been so long, why haven't you asked about Shangguan Linglan's whereabouts? Xiaochen raised his eyebrows and looked at Jingyu in confusion. According to Jingyu's temperament, she should have asked as soon as they left the cave. Do I even need to ask? Jingyu rolled her eyes and said, look at how calm our Xing Er is following you. Linglan must have been rescued by you guys. She's fine now. Xiaochen turned to look at Xing Er and asked in confusion, what does Shangguan Linglan's expression have to do with Xing Er's expression? You don't understand. Jingyu winked at Xing Er and said, Xing Er, am I right? Xing Er's face suddenly blushed and he called out in embarrassment, Madam, Ayaya, don't be embarrassed. Tell me about that dagger. Jingyu saw that the cold Xing Er was blushing and became excited. She winked at Xing Er and said. Jingyu's face turned even redder. Madam, aren't you hungry? I remember that there's a roasted chicken restaurant in Balwan that's pretty good. Xing Er took a deep breath and said calmly. Roasted chicken. Xiaochen, I'm so hungry. I want to eat roasted chicken. Jingyu was instantly excited. She hugged Xiaochen's arm and said resentfully, why aren't we there yet? Why are we so far? I'm so hungry. Xing Er followed behind Jingyu and Xiaochen and silently wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. He had dodged a bullet. It was too dangerous to follow behind Madam. Second Xing turned around and followed behind Xiaochen with his head down. He slowed down a little and just hung at a distance, not daring to get any closer. Baylor City was bustling with people. In the restaurant, this was already Jingyu's second roast chicken. There was a large table full of bones and leftovers. On the opposite side of the table, Xiaochen, Shangguan Linglan, and Xing San were expressionlessly watching Jingyu's bold and unrestrained eating. I always thought that I was rude enough, but today. Shanghai Linglan silently stared at Jingyu and said, I've lost at your feet, a crushing defeat. Burp. Jingyu comfortably burped and drank the soup in the bowl. She picked up a handkerchief and slowly wiped her mouth. Then she finally had time to look at Xiaochen and the others. Are you full? Xiaochen slightly raised his eyebrows and asked Jingyu. I'm full. Jingyu nodded seriously. You have a good appetite, Xiaochen silently said and raised his hand to call the waiter to clean up the table. You call this a good appetite? Shanghai Linglan almost jumped up. He stared at Jingyu and Xiaochen in shock and said, Yeah, you've eaten all the food you've been starving for the past 5 to 6 days. Linglan, you also know that I've been starving for the past 5 to 6 days? Jingyu looked at Shanghai Linglan with an aggrieved expression and cried, You don't know what kind of life I've been living in there. I have no food, no water, no sun, and no moon. I can't even take a bath. I've suffered. Stop, stop, stop. Shanghai Linglan repeatedly called for her to stop. Jingyu immediately stopped crying. The speed at which she changed her expression shocked Shanghai Linglan so much that his eyes widened. Shanghai Linglan held back for a long time and stared at Jingyu with a strange expression as he asked, You used to be an opera singer, right? Chapter 8:26. Tui. Nonsense. Jingyu glared at Shangguan Linglan. I was clearly acting. Shangguan Linglan and Xiao Chen's faces instantly darkened. Was there a difference between the two? Enough with the nonsense. Linglan, how are your injuries? Where's Yin Jian? Jingyu sat up straight and looked up at Shangguan Linglan. Without waiting for Shangguan Linglan's reply, she turned to Xiao Chen and asked, When did you get here? How did you find out about me? My injuries are fine now. Shangguan Linglan was the first to speak. Yin Jian and Yin Feng are also fine. We've arranged for them to stay in a room in the inn's backyard. As for how we found out about you, it was Yin Feng who led us into the forest to search for you. Yin Feng really did go looking for Yin Jian. Jingyu slowly let out a sigh of relief. Yun Tian's bravado that day was indeed just to scare her. No wonder she didn't see him bring Yin Feng out. However, this person already had such thoughts, and it was already unforgivable. Yes, when Yin Feng came alone, I knew something had happened to you. But because I was injured, I didn't dare move a muscle when I was trapped in the forest. The poison sex people had practically surrounded the entire area. If it wasn't for Xing Er coming to save me, I'm afraid I would have been waiting for death. Shangguan Linglan looked gratefully at Xing Er as he spoke. It's what I should do. Xing Er happened to be looking at Shangguan Linglan. When he saw Shangguan Linglan's gaze, his heart skipped a beat. His grip on his sword tightened as he turned his head away and replied coldly. I'm not thanking you. When Shangguan Linglan saw Xing Er's cold expression, her face darkened and she retorted fiercely. She didn't know why, but when she saw Xing Er's expression, Shangguan Linglan felt especially unhappy. Xing Er's face darkened and he didn't say anything. Xiao Chen, logically speaking, you should have arrived at Baylor long ago. Why did you delay so much? Jingyu nodded slightly after hearing Shangguan Linglan's words. She then turned to look at Xiao Chen and asked curiously, I would like to apologize to you for this. When Xiao Chen heard Jingyu's question, his face slowly darkened. He said coldly, I met Nailin Yu on the way to Baylor. She lied to me about the wet nurse's life, so I had no choice but to return to the royal city to investigate. You returned to the royal city? Jingyu's eyes widened slightly. She looked at Xiao Chen and asked, What happened to the wet nurse? I didn't find the wet nurse, but... Xiao Chen pursed his lips and said, I know that the wet nurse is safe. She was hidden by someone. When we were young, I made an agreement with the wet nurse that if she was safe, she would bury this under the roots of the banyan tree. I found this. Xiao Chen's hand was a plum blossom carved from wood. The carving was very delicate, and the word, safe, was engraved on it. It's good that she's safe. Jingyu let out a sigh of relief, but then Jingyu frowned again. She looked at Xiao Chen and said, How did you meet Nailin Yu on the road? I don't know. Xiao Chen slowly shook his head. He looked at Jingyu and said, Nailin Yu seemed to have come specifically to tell me this news. Then she followed me all the way to the royal city. When I wanted to deal with her, she disappeared. This woman's brain has problems. Jingyu's lips twitched. She was very conflicted. Chapter 8:27. Actually, after hearing Xiao Chen's words and combining them with what Yun Tian had told her last time, Jingyu had a rough idea of what was going on. Could it be that they were going to follow her and spread some inexplicable news to ruin her relationship with Xiao Chen? As expected, there was something wrong with their heads. Jingyu frowned slightly as she looked at Xiao Chen and continued to ask, So you came to Baylor only after going to the Imperial City? Xiao Chen nodded. The poison sect actually set up an ambush here. I think all of this was premeditated. Xiao Chen's expression was grave. Jingyu's lips curled slightly, clearly knowing what Xiao Chen meant. She arched her brows and said, "How did the poison sect find out that I was here? It looks like there are some interesting things among our people. What do you plan to do next?" Xiaochen leaned back slightly and narrowed his eyes at Jingyu. "I disappeared for 5 or 6 days. What about General Shangguan and Niaoqiu? Could they have already entered Luan City?" Jingyu frowned deeply as she looked at Xiaochen and Shangguan Linglan. Xiaochen's expression darkened slightly. "When I arrived at Baylor, General Shangguan's family and the Crown Prince Consort were being escorted into Luan City. Although I was powerless to save him, don't worry. I sent shadow guards to follow General Shangguan. They won't let his life be in danger." "Damn it." Jingyu's expression turned ugly as she clenched her fists tightly. If the poison sect hadn't come out to cause trouble, she would have saved General Shangguan and the Crown Prince Consort long ago. "Where are the poison sect's people?" Jingyu looked up at Xiaochen. "They left." Xiaochen narrowed his eyes. "I didn't see the poison sect's leader, but some of my subordinates killed quite a few of them. After asking around, I found out that the poison sect's leader had already left before I arrived." "How cunning." Jingyu's heart was filled with indignation. She narrowed her eyes and leaned back as she said, "I don't have time to settle accounts with the poison sect right now. I'll remember this debt. The most important thing right now is to rescue Great General Shangguan and Niaoqiu. Your body hasn't recovered yet. You shouldn't move around recklessly. Rest for a few days. It's not that easy to enter Luan City." Xiaochen looked up at Jingyu and said, Jingyu wanted to say that she was fine, but when she saw the deep look in Xiaochen's eyes, she silently swallowed her words. She muttered, "I know. Once I've recovered, I'll set off." When Xiaochen heard Jingyu's words, he raised his eyebrows in satisfaction. His lips curled into a faint smile. After a brief conversation, Jingyu returned to her room. She took a comfortable bath and lay down on the soft bed. "AI, so comfortable." Jingyu stroked the brocade quilt and sighed deeply. Xiaochen strode over. When he saw Jingyu lying on the bed, his brows relaxed slightly. He walked over to Jingyu and sat on the edge of the bed. He raised a hand to stroke Jingyu's hair. Jingyu turned to look at Xiaochen. Her lips curled into a faint smile as she rubbed against Xiaochen. "Xiaochen, I almost thought I'd never see you again." Jingyu closed her eyes as she rubbed against Xiaochen's hand. The familiar warmth of his slightly rough palm warmed Jingyu's heart. She seemed to sigh contentedly in her heart. Xiaochen raised a hand to stroke Jingyu's head. His eyes darkened as he asked, "That Qin Bai, who is he?" Chapter 828. When Jingyu heard Xiaochen's question, she lifted her head in confusion. She stared at Xiaochen's gloomy expression and coughed softly. Then she sat up in a serious manner and said, "This is what happened. I accidentally saved him from the poison sect. After that, Linglan and I were surrounded by the poison sect and I accidentally got poisoned. As I was running away, Qin Bai saved me. In the end, he bandaged my wounds and said something about taking responsibility for me." As Jingyu spoke, she raised her hand with hidden bitterness and said to Xiaochen, "Look, it's this thing." Without another word, Qin Bai put a ring on me. I swear. I threw the ring away, but there's actually a witchcraft spell on it. The mark on your finger was left by that damned ring. The scariest thing is, the witchcraft spell on the ring is life and death interdependence. You see that, right? It means that if Qin Bai dies, I die too. If I die, Qin Bai dies too. Life and death are intertwined. Jingyu looked at Xiaochen with tears in her eyes and said, "Xiaochen, what do we do? Life and death interdependence? A witchcraft spell." Xiaochen gently lifted Jingyu's hand and looked at the ring mark on Jingyu's finger. His expression turned cold and a faint trace of viciousness flashed through his pitch-black eyes. "How dare you lay your hands on my woman? You must be tired of living," Xiaochen coldly spat out. His words were filled with thick killing intent. "Xiaochen." Jingyu could feel Xiaochen's murderous intent and tightly grasped his hand. Her eyes were pleading as she bit her lip and said, "Xiaochen, I owe him a debt of gratitude. Don't touch him." "Jingyu." Xiao Chen's expression abruptly changed and he suddenly tightened his grip on Jing Yu's hand. His grip on Jing Yu's hand was so tight that it was as if he was about to break her hand. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Jing Yu grimaced in pain as she shook off Xiao Chen's hand. She glared at Xiao Chen and said angrily, "Xiao Chen, he saved my life. If it wasn't for Qin Bai, I would have died long ago. How can you be so selfish?" Xiao Chen felt a sharp pain in his heart as he looked at Jing Yu, who was angry at him because of another man. The corners of his lips curled up coldly. In the room, the two of them stared at each other for a long time. In the end, Xiao Chen slowly relaxed his clenched fists. He stood up abruptly and turned to leave without a word. Jing Yu sat on the bed and listened to the sound of the door closing. Her heart suddenly skipped a beat. Just now, what was wrong with her? Why was she angry at Xiao Chen because of Qin Bai? Jing Yu clutched her chest in a panic. She didn't know why, but at that moment, Jing Yu suddenly felt a little flustered. She felt as if something was going wrong and it was developing in a way that she couldn't have predicted. She was now in a panic. Jing Yu's gaze fell on her middle finger. The ring-like mark was quietly imprinted on her finger. It was like a sign or a curse that made Jing Yu feel even more uncomfortable. Jing Yu stared at the mark for a long time. Suddenly, Qin Bai's figure appeared in her mind. That familiar face, that calm voice, was exactly the same as his. Jing Yu's heart surged as she recalled the scene in the cave. Her wrist had been cut and the fresh blood that had flowed out of her mouth. She hadn't done anything wrong. She hadn't allowed Xiao Chen to touch Qin Bai because she wanted him to repay his kindness. Chapter 829. As Jing Yu thought of this, she gathered her thoughts and lowered her eyes before lying down. She laid on the bed and stared at the ceiling before slowly closing her eyes. Jing Yu was probably really tired as she fell asleep after a short while. Jing Yu was completely silent in her dreams. Outside the door, on the roof, Xiao Chen sat on the roof with a wine jar in each hand. He stared at the dark night sky and the bright moon as he drank silently. "Master!" Xing Er was dressed in black and quietly leaped onto the roof. He looked at Xiao Chen, who was drinking alone, and frowned slightly. Xiao Chen turned to look at Xing Er but didn't say anything. Xing Er also stood silently behind Xiao Chen and silently watched as Xiao Chen drank mouthful after mouthful of wine. "Master, drinking too much wine is bad for the body." Xing Er finally stepped forward to stop Xiao Chen's hand. Xiao Chen paused slightly and looked up at Xing Er. His eyes were cold and he didn't look drunk at all. He just looked at Xing Er coldly. "Let go." The cold words were spat out. Xing Er felt his scalp go numb, but he still held on tightly to Xiao Chen and didn't let go. "Master, perhaps Madam didn't react in time and that's why she's angry with you." Xing Er looked like he was going to die. He gritted his teeth and said, "Also, that man called Qin Bai has an unknown background. It's possible that he has deceived Madam." Xing Er's words finally had an effect. Xiao Chen successfully frowned and slowly put down the wine jar in his hand. Xing Er silently heaved a sigh of relief and retracted his hand. He quietly said, "Master, it's useless to drown your sorrows in wine. The most important thing now is to investigate Qin Bai's background and his motive for getting close to Madam." Xiao Chen coldly narrowed his eyes and looked at the distant sky. He said, "Go investigate." Xing Er bowed and replied. He looked at the wine jar at Xiao Chen's feet and quietly said, "Master, this wine, how about this subordinate help you take it down?" Xiao Chen's face darkened. He glared at Xing Er and coldly replied. Xing Er hurriedly went forward to take the wine jars and flew down. Master didn't need to drink anymore. Drinking was a bad thing. Xing Er jumped down from the roof and raised his hand to place the wine jar on the stone table. Just as he was about to let go, he heard footsteps from the side. Xing Er frowned and turned to look. He immediately saw Shangguan Linglan standing on the stone steps and under the corridor. Shangguan Linglan was wearing a thin inner garment with a long robe casually draped over her body. Her black hair was draped over her shoulders. Her face was calm and her eyes were tranquil. She just stood in the corridor like this. Looking at her, Second Xing's heart skipped a beat. At this moment, Shangguan Linglong was different from how she was in the day. There was a faint worry between her brows and a calm emotion in her eyes. Xing Er was not used to it for a moment. Xing Er pursed his lips and frowned at Shangguan Linglong. He didn't know what she was doing out here in the middle of the night. Are you drinking? Shangguan Linglong glanced at Xing Er and his gaze landed on the wine jar on the stone table. He raised his eyes slightly and asked Xing Er in confusion. This. Xing Er looked at the wine jar in his hand. He seemed to want to explain but didn't know how to. Before Xing Er could think of a way to explain, Shangguan Linglong had already walked over. She raised her hand and grabbed the wine jar in Xing Er's hand. Good, I want to drink too. Chapter 830. It's not good for a girl to drink, Xing Er said as he frowned and glared at Shangguan Linglong, not letting go of the wine jar in his hand. What's not good about it? I'm happy to do it. Give it to me. Shangguan Linglong snatched the jar of wine from Second Xing's hand without saying a word. She raised her hand and was about to put it into her mouth when Second Xing's face turned cold. His hand turned into a palm and pushed the jar of wine to the ground. Pa! A jar of wine spilled on the ground. Shangguan Linglong's eyes widened as he stared at the broken wine jar and the wine spilling all over the floor. The sound of the wine spilling out made Shangguan Linglong gnash his teeth in anger. Are you out of your mind? What does my drinking have to do with you? If you want to snatch it, then snatch it. You even dropped the wine. Shangguan Linglong's eyes widened as she angrily glared at Second Xing. Second interrogation officer glanced at the shattered wine jars on the ground and said, "It was an accident." Shangguan Linglong sat on the stone chair angrily. Xing Er stepped forward and placed his hand on Shangguan Linglong's shoulder. He frowned and said, "Do you miss your family?" Shangguan Linglong trembled and looked up at Xing Er, who was standing beside him. He was dressed in black and his face was as cold as ever. "It's none of your business." Shangguan Linglong shook off Xing Er's hand on his shoulder and got up to leave. "Stop right there." Xing Er grabbed Shangguan Linglong's hand and frowned. Shangguan Linglong turned to look at Xing Er and said unhappily, "Are you ordering me?" "Xing Er, do you know how annoying you are?" Shangguan Linglong shook off Xing Er's hand and turned to leave without hesitation. Xing Er's eyes widened. The hand that was shaken off still had her heat, but it made Xing Er feel like it was piercing and burning. Annoying? Xing Er lowered his head slightly and clenched his fists. He turned around and disappeared into the darkness. His black clothes blended into the night and he disappeared. Shangguan Linglong angrily returned to the room, fell on the bed and scolded fiercely, "Isn't he just a little guard? How dare he order me around? You didn't let me drink. Annoying. Who do you think you are? What right do you have to control me? Annoying." After Shangguan Linglong rolled on the bed, he took a deep breath and stared at the bed. He calmed down. "Xing Er. Father, mother, wait for me to come and save you." Jing Yu recuperated peacefully. For the past 3 days, Jing Yu rarely saw Xiao Chen. Occasionally she would see Xiao Chen talking to Xing Er. Then the two of them would talk and leave. She didn't know what they were busy with. Stupid Xiao Chen. Idiot. Idiot. Jing Yu drank the medicine in one gulp. She sat by the window and looked at the bustling street below. Looking at the empty room, she felt very uncomfortable. She cursed and cursed. Her heart was full of resentment. It had been 3 days. Xiao Chen didn't say a word to her. He didn't even look at her. He just turned and left when he saw her. Jing Yu was so angry that she almost went berserk. "Little Yeye?" Shangguan Linglong poked his head into the room. He looked around and saw Jing Yu sitting by the window. He straightened his body and walked towards Jing Yu. Jing Yu looked at Shangguan Linglong and sighed. "Oh, what's wrong? Are you still angry with the 9 emperors?" Shangguan Linglong raised his eyebrows and looked at Jing Yu with amusement. Chapter 831. Jing Yu sighed bitterly and said, "Xiao Chen has already ignored me for 3 days." Shangguan Linglong silently swallowed and said, "It's probably because the 9th emperors are too busy. You didn't see how he brought Xing Er up and down these past few days. He's so busy that I can't even see his shadow. Don't worry. Sigh. Jingyu sighed deeply and said, my injuries are fine now. Linglong, let's go to Luan City tomorrow. Shangguan Linglong took a deep breath and nodded. Luan City is too chaotic. We definitely can't go in like this. We have to go buy some things and disguise ourselves. We have to buy things. As for the disguise. Jingyu straightened her body and said, Luan City is ruled by the strong. It's just a matter of killing. The people who go in will kill everyone. What's there to be afraid of? Isn't this a little too arrogant? Shangguan Linglong's mouth twitched when she heard this and asked. Linglong, you'll know what true arrogance is once you enter Luan City. Jingyu curled her lips and stood up to stretch. She said, let's go. We'll go buy things. Did you bring money? It seems like there's only a little money left. Shangguan Linglong said as he untied the money pouch on his waist. That's enough. Let's go. Jingyu raised her hand and took it. She silently waited and smiled. Without saying anything, she pulled Shangguan Linglong and walked towards Baylor Street. Standing on the crowded street, Jingyu took a deep breath. This feels great. Jingyu sighed deeply and pulled Shangguan Linglong's hand. She said excitedly, let's go play. Hey. Didn't you say you were going shopping? Shangguan Linglong's eyes widened. He looked at Jingyu in horror and said, save your money. That's all I have left. What are you afraid of? If you don't have money, you can ask Xing Er for it. Jingyu completely ignored Shangguan Linglong. Her eyes were filled with curiosity as she looked at the items on the street stalls. There were even bamboo-woven ponies and rabbits. It was simply magical. What? Why did you ask Xing Er for it? Shangguan Linglong stood beside Jingyu in a daze and asked, I don't think he owes me any money. Jingyu coughed slightly and turned to look at Shangguan Linglong. Do you believe me? If you ask Xing Er for money, I guarantee that Xing Er will give it to you without a second thought. Why? Shangguan Linglong blinked her eyes and looked at Jingyu with a confused expression as she asked. This is a secret that cannot be revealed. Jingyu pursed her lips and replied. She heard a commotion. Jingyu turned her head in confusion and pulled Shangguan Linglong, who was still in a daze. What's so fun over there? Hurry, let's go take a look. We're here to buy things. Before Shangguan Linglong could finish speaking, Jingyu reached out and pulled him towards the crowd. Jingyu pulled Shangguan Linglong and crept into the crowd to see what was going on. It was a juggler. Chapter 8:32. Fellow villagers and elders, today I will show everyone how to tease a snake. There were quite a few people standing and sitting in the circle. Some had monkeys on their shoulders, some had rabbits in their hands, and there was even a tiger in the cage. Jingyu had just stood still when she heard the man speak. When everyone heard him teasing a snake, they all waved their hands disinterestedly. What was there to see about teasing a snake? Everyone, don't be anxious, don't be anxious. The burly man quickly said, as everyone knows, everyone has seen this snake before, right? However, there is a type of snake. I guarantee that no one has ever seen it before. You have to know that this is the #1 poisonous snake in the world. Hiss. When everyone heard this, their eyes instantly widened. They looked at the person who spoke with astonishment. Was this person going to tease a poisonous snake? Big brother, when you say tease a snake, are you going to tease the white-browed viper? Someone in the crowd asked with fear and doubt. The white-browed viper is at most a tyrant of the plains. However, the snake I'm going to tease today is the #1 poisonous snake in the world. As the man spoke, he raised his hand slightly and called out, bring that cage up. Coming. A young man carried a metal cage covered with a black cloth and placed it in front of everyone. The surrounding spectators all began to whisper. Jingyu, who was standing in the crowd, also frowned. Shangguan Linglong curiously stretched his neck and looked at the cage covered with a black cloth with a puzzled expression. Everyone, please take a closer look at what snake this is. The man raised his hand and pulled the black cloth away. A jet-black snake lay quietly in the metal cage, its body coiled up and motionless. Everyone looked at the snake that was as black as ink and began to whisper to each other, guessing what kind of snake it was. Everyone watched carefully. As the man spoke, he raised his leg and kicked the metal cage. The coiled snake also stood up and moved its body in the metal cage, raising its head. Its jet-black body was suffused with a dazzling luster, and its raised head and abdomen were revealed to everyone. A blood-red line extended from its lower jaw, exposing itself to everyone's sight. Burial of red flowers. Almost in an instant, everyone's eyes were filled with horror as they stared at the snake that was curled up in the iron cage. Their faces were filled with disbelief. Looking at the flower burial snake, it was probably already an adult. No wonder this person dared to boast that it was the #1 poisonous snake in the world. No one would have dared to think that this person was actually going to tease the flower burial snake. One had to know that the fangs of the flower burial snake were extremely poisonous. Moreover, it was a highly toxic poison without any antidote. Death was certain. No one dared to provoke the flower burial snake, but this person actually wanted to tease it? Everyone, do you understand now? This is the world-famous flower burial snake. That person looked at everyone's expression and knew that he had successfully attracted everyone's attention. Some people even exclaimed that someone actually dared to tease the flower burial snake. One by one, the people on the street rushed over. The peddlers stopped setting up their stalls and stood at their stalls to look at the crowd. They were shocked to see the flower burial snake in the cage. They sucked in a breath of cold air. It really was the flower burial snake. Chapter 8:33. Jing Yu's eyes widened when she saw the flower burial snake in the cage. Just as she thought, this ink snake was indeed a red flower burial snake, but it wasn't her flower burial snake. Jing Yu lowered her eyes slightly and thought of the little flower burial snake that was by her side. Jing Yu missed that little body very much, but why did it suddenly run away? Jing Yu couldn't understand this matter. Was it because she scared off the other flower burial snakes? A group of flower burial snakes. Once flower burial snake left, it never returned. Jing Yu frowned when she thought of this. Why did it turn out like this? Brother, how are you going to tease the snake? Are you going to release the snake? More and more people gathered around. One must know that ordinary people rarely saw the flower burial snake. If they saw it, they wouldn't even be able to escape in time. Since I'm teasing the snake, if I don't release it, wouldn't everyone be unable to enjoy watching it? The burly man laughed heartily as he spoke. When he reached out to open the cage, the surrounding spectators all took a big step back and looked at the flower burial snake with fear. Jing Yu didn't move. Suddenly, she saw the people around her retreating. Jing Yu and Shengguan Linglan also retreated and stood at the front. A burly man beside her blocked half of Jing Yu's body. She nervously wiped the sweat off her forehead and stared at the man's actions. Jing Yu could clearly hear the sound of the burly man swallowing his saliva. The corner of her mouth twitched violently. Did he have to be so nervous? Jing Yu gave the burly man a strange look, then turned her head to continue watching the situation in the field. Shoo! The person in the crowd raised his hand and opened the cage that held the snake. He raised his hand to his lips and gestured for everyone to keep quiet. That serious expression on his face caused everyone to feel nervous. All of them even relaxed their breathing and widened their eyes as they looked at the huge body of red burial flower that was slowly moving out of the cage. It was at this moment that the man took out a stick from somewhere. There was a rope hanging from the stick. Jing Yu watched as the man made strange noises and walked carefully, jumping left and right in front of the red flower burial snake as if he was a monkey playing with fire. Jing Yu almost laughed out loud. Brother, are you sure you're playing with the snake? Is the snake playing with you? The man swung his whip fiercely. The whip almost hit Red Flower's body, but Red Flower didn't move at all. It just calmly stared at the man. Jing Yu even felt that if the flower burial snake could turn into a human, it would look at the man as if he was an idiot and yawn. However, Jing Yu was the only one who thought so. When the others saw the man's actions, they were so scared that they stopped breathing. Their hearts were beating fast when they saw that the flower burial snake didn't move. The man who was playing with the snake also nervously wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. "Brother, you're really risking your life to make money." Jingyu's mouth twitched violently as she watched the man continue to court death. "Everyone, don't be anxious. Don't be afraid. This flower burial snake isn't that scary." That person teased the snake while saying some inexplicable words, which made people even more nervous. "Do you see this rope? Today, I'm going to force the flower burial snake to open its mouth. I'm going to put this rope in its mouth and tame this snake that no one dares to provoke." The man who tamed the snake made a bold statement that made Jingyu widen her eyes. Chapter 8:34. What a perfect death wish. Jingyu calmly crossed her arms and stared at the people in the arena. Finally, the flower burial snake moved its body in the midst of the commotion. It seemed to be uncomfortable in this place. The flower burial snake coiled its body around the iron cage and went up. Speaking of which, this snake was really long. It was at least 3 meters long. Look at its body. Jingyu thought of the flower burial snake. That small body could still be hidden in her sleeves. Shengguan Linglan saw that person's movements were getting bigger and bigger. He looked at Jingyu and asked, "Jingyu, do you think we should be good people and dig a grave for the snake tamer?" "No need." Jingyu shook her head calmly and said, "Let's burn it. Who knows if the poison will spread?" "That's true. It would be bad if the poison spread from the corpse and killed the plants." Shengguan Linglan nodded in agreement. The two of them talked as if there was no one else around. They firmly believed that the snake tamer would definitely die. This was an act of seeking death. If he didn't die, it would be a waste of his profession. Jingyu silently yawned and expressed her sympathy. Slap. The person shouted and the whip really hit the snake's body. The originally quiet flower burial snake suddenly shook its head and opened its bloody mouth. Its eyes were filled with ferocity. The spectators were so scared that they all leaned back and retreated further away from the circle. Quick, 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 catch it. They finally forced the flower burial snake to open its mouth. Everyone was so excited that their eyes widened. They hurriedly tried to put the whip on the snake's mouth, but the flower burial snake nimbly shook them off. Jingyu slightly widened her eyes. "Hey, this snake is really smart. It can compete with my flower burial snake. So clumsy. Let me do it." When the snake tamer saw that he had missed a good opportunity, his face was filled with regret. He raised his hand and snatched the rod and rope from the person beside him. He swung the whip in his hand again and lashed it at the flower burial snake. The whip landed on the flower burial snake's body again. Perhaps it was because he used too much strength this time. The flower burial snake was completely enraged. Its sturdy body charged straight at the people, causing the surrounding women to scream in panic. The people didn't expect the flower burial snake to suddenly go crazy. A man beside him raised a wooden stick and was about to hit the snake with a ferocious look on his face. "Stop!" The snake tamer cried out in alarm and widened his eyes. However, it was impossible for him to withdraw his hand. The wooden stick had already landed on Zonghua Red's body. Zonghua Red jumped up in pain and let out hissing sounds. I got it. Quickly catch its head." The snake tamer dashed forward and swung the rope in his hand, putting it on the snake's head. His swinging was so accurate that it caused the surrounding spectators to cry out in alarm. "Caught it! Quickly, tie it up." The man's face was filled with excitement. He lifted his foot and wanted to step on the snake's head. The strength of the rope in his hand was so great that it caused the flower burial snake to hiss miserably. 5 or 6 strong men in the city were having a hard time dealing with a snake. The sticks in their hands mercilessly hit the flower burial snake like raindrops. It was such a cruel scene, but the spectators only had nervous and excited expressions. They didn't have the slightest bit of pity or desire to stand up for the snake. Chapter 8:35. Jingyu coldly turned her head to look at everyone's expressions. "Mother, this snake is so pitiful. Let it go." A small voice sounded. It was a small child who was tugging at the corner of a woman's hair. With a face full of tears, the child said, "Bao, look at this snake. It hurts. Bao, be good. This is the most poisonous and evil snake. Bao, if you see it in the future, you must beat it to death." The woman raised her hand to pat the child's head and said, But this snake didn't bite anyone. Those who beat it are the bad guys." The child said angrily. When the woman heard this, she grabbed her child and said fiercely, "Don't talk nonsense." Jing Yu quietly looked at the scene in front of her. When she heard their words, the corner of her mouth revealed an incomparably cold smile. "See? This is the human heart." Jing Yu looked at the snake in the crowd. It was almost tied up by the crowd. Jing Yu looked at the tongue of the red flower snake and suddenly felt a pain in her heart. Without hesitation, she threw out the dagger in her hand. The dagger accurately cut the rope that bound the red flower snake. The moment the rope was cut, the red flower snake fiercely shook its head to break free. It opened its bloody mouth and raised its head, letting out a hissing sound. Its mouth was like lightning as it bit down on the thigh of that person. Screams of pain filled the air. The snake is killing people." The burly man who was bitten almost instantly fell to the ground with blood flowing out of his 7 orifices. Everyone was shocked by this sudden turn of events. The surrounding people fled in panic. Everyone ran in a panic. Some people fell to the ground and were trampled. In the end, only Jing Yu and Shengguan Linglan were left standing calmly. "You were the one who used the hidden weapon." The snake tamer at the beginning saw the dagger stuck in the ground and turned to look at Jing Yu and Shengguan Linglan in disbelief. His eyes were filled with shock. "So what if it's me?" Jing Yu crossed her arms and looked at the man calmly. "If you have the time to question me, why don't you take a look at the flower burial snake behind you?" Jing Yu's eyes were filled with mockery. She wasn't afraid of running away. Instead, she looked at the man calmly and said with a smile. The man's expression changed drastically when he heard that. He quickly turned around and looked at red burial flower that was approaching him. The 4 burly men beside him had already been bitten by red burial flower. They were all bleeding from their orifices and were dead. "Don't come over." The man gripped the wooden stick in his hand tightly and trembled as he looked at the approaching red burial flower. At this moment, even his intestines were green with regret. He didn't expect the red burial flower to be so powerful. The moment the red burial flower came into contact with the poison, one would die. There wasn't even a chance of treatment. Zhang Huahong opened its bloody mouth, revealing its sharp fangs. Its head and body suddenly jumped up and bit down on that person's throat. All of this happened in the blink of an eye, and the moment it touched, it separated. Bang! The man's body fell to the ground. His eyes widened in disbelief as black blood flowed out of his orifices. His death was truly tragic. TSK, we really have to collect the corpse. Jing Yu looked at the man who had fallen and silently shook her head and smacked her lips. Chapter 8:36. What do we do now? After Shengguan Linglan saw that person die, her gaze landed on Zhang Huahong. She swallowed her saliva silently and reached out to tug at Jing Yu's sleeve. "What do you mean? Are you really going to collect their corpses?" Jing Yu rolled her eyes and said, "You're dirtying my hands. Let's go." But Shengguan Linglan looked at the flower burial snake that was closing in on them and said with a crying face, "This flower burial snake doesn't seem like it's going to let us go." Jing Yu raised her head and saw Zhang Huahong spitting out its scarlet tongue as it slithered towards Jing Yu and Shengguan Linglan. Its black body glowed with an incomparably moving luster under the sunlight. "It's not going to let us go?" Jing Yu narrowed her eyes and stared at the flower burial snake. Hiss! The flower burial snake turned its head and looked curiously at Jing Yu and Shengguan Linglan. It raised its head and stared at Jing Yu. Jing Yu frowned and stared at the flower burial snake. Strange, why is this snake staring at me? Also, why did she feel that this snake gave her a very familiar and intimate feeling? Is it because of my abnormal pupils again? Jing Yu looked at Shangguan Linglong and asked, "Are my eyes black?" Yes. Shangguan Linglong was slightly stunned as she stared at Jing Yu's pitch-black eyes and nodded in a daze. "That's not right. Why do I feel like this snake wants to get close to me?" Jing Yu turned her head and looked at the flower burial snake. It seemed to be agitated as it shook its head and stuck out its forked tongue. Jing Yu's mouth twitched. "No way. Why is this snake suddenly so agitated?" "Hey, I saved you. You can't be so ungrateful. Don't be agitated. What if he opens his mouth and bites me out of agitation?" Jing Yu looked at the approaching red flower burial snake and felt alarmed. She shouldn't have stayed and watched the show. She should have run with the crowd. It's over. Just a moment ago, she was still laughing and forcing others to die. Now it's my turn to die. The corner of Jing Yu's mouth twitched. She thought to herself, should I run now? But it seems that running now will only anger the snake. Jing Yu frowned and stared at the approaching flower burial snake with a cold light in her eyes. There was only one thought in her mind. There's only one way to stop this snake. There is only one way to stop it. Jing Yu's eyes turned cold as she stared at the flower burial snake with her pitch-black eyes. Almost instantly, Jing Yu's pitch-black eyes turned into a strange color under the sunlight. The strange color of her eyes flickered with a threatening luster. Before anyone could see it clearly, Jing Yu's eyes returned to their original black color. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. They only saw her eyes move for a moment before they returned to their original black color. SSS. Others didn't see it clearly, but that didn't mean that red flower burial snake didn't see it clearly. The strange color in her eyes caused red flower burial snake to suddenly stop. Jing Yu saw that red flower burial snake had stopped moving and heaved a sigh of relief. It seems that the strange color is still useful. However, just as Jing Yu heaved a sigh of relief, red flower burial snake, which had stopped moving, suddenly started twisting its body excitedly. Before Jing Yu could react, red flower burial snake charged at Jing Yu excitedly. This strange color is fake. Why isn't it working? Jing Yu's expression changed drastically as she shouted. Shangguan Linglong's face also turned pale from shock. Chapter 837. Jing Yu. Shangguan Linglong's expression changed drastically. He wanted to pounce on Jing Yu without hesitation, but Jing Yu stopped him. "Don't move." Jing Yu's expression changed as she stopped Shangguan Linglong. She watched as red flower snake wrapped itself around her waist affectionately. Affectionate. That's right. It was affectionate. What was going on? Red flower snake wrapped itself around Jing Yu's waist happily. It raised its huge head and rubbed against Jing Yu's neck. Yes, you didn't see wrongly. It was rubbing against her. It was rubbing against her like a spoiled child. This. Shangguan Linglong looked at this scene in horror, her eyes wide open. This scene was so familiar. The cold body rubbing against her neck made Jing Yu's eyes widen slightly. She suddenly recalled the time when red flower snake wrapped itself around her neck and forced her to wake up. Red flower snake? Are you red flower snake? Jing Yu didn't know what was wrong with her, but she suddenly turned her head in surprise. She raised her hand and carefully touched the snake's body as she asked, "SSSS." Red flower snake spat out its forked tongue excitedly. It couldn't help but tighten its grip around Jing Yu's waist. "Hey, let's talk nicely. Don't use so much force. I'm going to suffocate if you use more force." Jing Yu raised her hand and patted red flower snake's body. Red flower snake obediently let go of her. It raised its head and rubbed Jing Yu's face excitedly. "Is it really red flower snake?" Jing Yu reached out her hand carefully towards red flower snake's mouth. Shangguan Linglong watched from the side with trepidation. Red flower snake looked at Jing Yu's body and happily rubbed its head against Jing Yu's hand. It coiled its body around Jing Yu's arm and rested its head on Jing Yu's shoulder. "Hey, it's really red flower snake." Jing Yu widened her eyes in surprise. Red flower snake's arm was very heavy. It wasn't as small as it used to be. "How did you grow so big? Didn't you used to have a flower skin? How did you turn black?" Jing Yu turned Red's body around in surprise. Red Flower Snake's body had changed so much. She wasn't used to it. Zonghua felt resentful. It looked at Jingyu like an idiot. How long had it been? It's a snake. But they will grow up, okay? It can shed its skin too. Don't you have any common sense? Yeah? Is this the red flower snake from before? Shangguan Linglan finally understood. The snake hanging on Jingyu's body was the red flower snake that Jingyu always hid in her sleeve? Probably, maybe it seems to be. Jingyu frowned. She looked at Red Flower Snake, who was hanging on her body, unwilling to come down. The corners of her mouth twitched. Didn't this snake run away from Baofeng Temple? Why did it appear here? Shangguan Linglan was speechless. He looked at Red Flower Snake, who was hanging on Jingyu's body, and asked, "What do we do now?" Jingyu turned to look at Red Flower Snake and the corpses on the ground. She said quietly, "What else can we do? We can only take this snake away. Otherwise, we can't just leave it here." Then there are only two outcomes. Jingyu turned to Shangguan Linglan and said, "Either this snake bites countless people to death, or countless people beat it to death. What do you think?" Chapter 838. Let's take it away then. Shangguan Linglan's mouth twitched as he said, "As long as you can guarantee that this flower burial snake won't bite, I don't mind if you hug it to sleep." "I have a problem with that." As soon as Shangguan Linglan finished speaking, before Jingyu had the chance to reply, they heard an extremely cold voice from behind them, causing Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan to turn around in shock. "Xiaochen?" Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan turned their heads and saw two people standing not far away, one in front and one behind. They were similarly dressed in black and had the same expressionless face. The corner of Shangguan Linglan's mouth twitched fiercely. She was extremely suspicious in her heart. For Second Xing to become so cold, he must have learned bad things from Ninth Imperial Uncle. "Get down." Xiaochen stared coldly at Zonghua, who was hanging on Jingyu's body. His dark eyes were like sharp blades as he stared at the flower burial snake. There was a strong sense of threat and killing intent in his eyes. The warning made Zonghua shrink its head back. Then, under the shocked gazes of Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan, it slid down Jingyu's body and landed on the ground obediently. It looked at Xiaochen carefully. "You're already so big, why are you still afraid of Xiaochen?" Jingyu was almost angered to death by this stinky snake as she glared at Zonghua with hidden bitterness. Zonghua slithered silently to the side and hid like a little wife. Jingyu's mouth twitched. When Zonghua was young, she thought that Zonghua was quite cute. But now it was such a big snake. It was even acting cute. Jingyu was about to vomit blood. "Mph." Xiaochen snorted and walked towards Jingyu. He scanned Jingyu's body and said, "You're still recovering, don't run around." "My injuries are fine now." Jingyu lowered her head awkwardly. He was ignoring her this morning and now he was acting like this. How annoying. Xiaochen frowned as he lifted Jingyu's chin in front of everyone and said, "Are you still angry at me?" Jingyu's face turned red when she saw Xiaochen's actions. She quickly dodged Xiaochen's hand. Xiaochen suddenly pulled Jingyu into his embrace and hugged her tightly. "Aya!" Jingyu exclaimed as her nose bumped into Xiaochen's shoulder. Her body trembled slightly as she felt Xiaochen's warm body and his heavy heartbeat. Her heart softened and she smiled faintly as she hugged Xiaochen's waist. Ahem. Shangguan Linglan coughed a few times as a reminder when he saw the two of them hugging as if there was no one else around. Jingyu released her hands without a change in her expression. She turned to look at Zonghua and said, "You still have to keep this fellow by your side. Don't let it hang on you." Xiaochen frowned and said unhappily, "Just put it in a metal cage." Jingyu stared at Xiaochen speechlessly. In the end, Jingyu, hurry up and get Zonghua off me." Shangguan Linglan was almost howling as he held onto Zonghua's tail. His body was stiff as he moved forward step by step. "Xiaochen, is this really okay?" Jingyu heard Shangguan Linglan's howls and her mouth twitched. She looked at Xiaochen with a conflicted expression. She wanted to turn around to take a look, but Xiao Chen grabbed her shoulders tightly and didn't let her look. Chapter 839. I can see that she's enjoying it a lot. Otherwise, why would she scream so loudly? Xiao Chen said expressionlessly. Enjoying it a lot, screaming so loudly. When Jingyu heard Xiao Chen's words, why did it sound so strange? Xiao Chen, you're going to die. When Jingyu seemed to have thought of something, her face suddenly turned red and she raised her hand to slap Xiao Chen. Did I say anything? Xiao Chen was baffled by Jingyu's slap. He raised his hand to grab Jingyu's small hand and looked at Jingyu in confusion. When Jingyu heard Xiao Chen's question, her face turned even redder. She giggled a few times and quickly walked away. Jingyu and Xiao Chen's group went back to buy some things they needed for tomorrow and headed back to the inn. On the way back, Jingyu could only hear Shengguan Linglan's crazy screams. Behind her, Xing Er hugged the sword in his hand and silently stared at Shengguan Linglan with a faint smile on his face. When they returned to the inn, it was already night time. Jingyu finally put the burial flower down and put it in a room. Shengguan Linglan immediately ran away as if he had seen a ghost. His appearance made Jingyu laugh loudly. Why was this little girl suddenly so afraid of snakes? Jingyu and Xiao Chen's group sat together to discuss the matter of entering Luan City tomorrow. After thinking about it, Jingyu felt that there was no need for any disguise. Luan City was a well-deserved city of chaos. Actually, I really want to know. Jingyu said as she slightly raised her head and said, My abnormal pupil's evildoer, if placed in Luan City, will it be the same as in the outside world? Xiao Chen frowned slightly. He turned his head and looked at Jingyu with a burning gaze. Different pupils? If they really appear in Luan City, I'm afraid it will be the same as the outside world. However, the same mentality will be the same as the outside world. Jingyu frowned in confusion. Compete. Xiao Chen faintly spat out 2 words and said, In Luan City, the strong are the kings. The ability to tame beasts with different pupils has long been known to everyone. If one can snatch the other pupil, one will have the help to become the king. With such a temptation, who wouldn't want to snatch it? Fight for it? Jingyu's eyes lit up. Suddenly, she seemed to have thought of something. Her lips curled into a faint smile as she said, Perhaps, this Luan City will be a turning point. If I can borrow the pressure of Luan City, I can stimulate the beast-taming ability in my body. Jingyu said as she slowly reached out to touch the corners of her eyes. Jingyu clearly understood the power of the other pupils. It was very, very powerful. Right now, she only controlled 1/10,000th of it. Jingyu's words caused the eyes of Xiao Chen and the others to light up. They looked at each other and revealed a serious expression. It seemed like this trip into Luan City was not just to save people. It was also to train. Since that was the case, why bother to pretend? Luan City, regardless of whether it was in Tokyo or the other 4 countries, its reputation was quite resounding. In a city of chaos, the people who entered Luan City were all murderers who licked blood from their blades or some extremely vicious people. If an ordinary person entered, they would either be tortured to death or their savage heart would be stimulated and become an even more vicious person. The strong survived and the weak could only be bullied and humiliated. This was the truest portrayal of Luan City. After exiting Baluo City and entering the forest from the west, Jingyu and Xiao Chen's group rode their horses and slowly advanced forward. The closer they got to Luan City, the fewer tree trunks and bare leaves they could see. Chapter 840. Jingyu sat on her horse and stepped out of the forest step by step. With a glance, she saw a city standing in the middle of the black soil on the plains. Looking from Jingyu's direction, she saw that the city seemed to be built with black stones. Luan City, black soil. It is rumored that killing is second nature in Luan City. Every day, countless people are killed. Over time, the blood seeped into the ground, causing it to no longer be able to grow any vegetation. The area within 5 miles of Luan City has also completely turned into a land of death, a land of black soil. Xiao Chen slightly raised his head and looked around as he spoke. Jing Yu and Shengguan Linglan raised their eyebrows in surprise. This rumor was really frightening. If that's the case, how many people have died in Luan City? Shengguan Linglan said in surprise, "Where are the corpses of these people buried?" Buried? Jing Yu sneered and slightly raised her head to the left. She said to Shengguan Linglan, "Look at what's over there." Vultures? Shengguan Linglan's face slightly paled as he stared at the scene in front of him. On their left, not far away, there was a large group of vultures and crows circling in the sky, letting out sharp cries. Below these vultures, there were dozens of broken corpses lying on the black soil. The vultures and crows stood on the corpses and ate the flesh of the corpses. In the end, only the bones were left, which were cleaned up by wild wolves or other wild beasts. The people of Luan City call this a sky burial. Xiao Chen looked at the scene in front of him and said indifferently, throwing the corpses out for the vultures and crows to eat, "It's a sky burial." What is that? Shengguan Linglan's scalp went numb as he looked at the two corpses hanging on the tall withered tree. The corpses were full of white corpse worms. Shengguan Linglan trembled violently and looked at Jing Yu and Xiao Chen as he asked. "This is a punishment, and also a warning to outsiders." Xiao Chen looked at the corpse hanging on the tree and narrowed his eyes. These two people must have committed some unforgivable crime in Luan City for them to be punished like this. "Did you see that? The vultures and crows won't eat these two corpses." Xiao Chen narrowed his eyes and said, "That's because the people in Luan City sprinkled a powder on the corpse. The vultures and crows hate the smell. That's why it's like this." These two people were hung up while they were still alive. Then they were made to experience hunger, heat, cold, and pain. They experienced the process of their own death. Finally, they died and their corpses dried in the wind. This is their punishment. When Xiao Chen finished speaking, Jing Yu and Shengguan Linglan's expressions changed. "Pervert." Jing Yu's mouth twitched fiercely. In the past, the perverts she saw here were one by one. But now, the perverts here were a bunch of them. What crime did they commit to receive such a ruthless punishment? Shengguan Linglan silently swallowed his saliva and looked at Xiao Chen as he asked. For example, raping someone's wife is the biggest crime. Xiao Chen turned his head slightly and looked at Luan City, which was standing in the black soil, and said, "In Luan City, they can wantonly sleep with women, but they can only do it willingly. They can't force other people's women. This is the rule." Chapter 841. Actually, compared to the outside world, I yearn for Luan City even more. Xiao Chen said as he slightly raised his eyebrows. He turned to look at Jing Yu and said, "Are you ready to go in?" "Of course, I am also looking forward to it." Jing Yu's eyes were filled with a smile. In the blink of an eye, her pair of pitch-black eyes turned into two colors, one gold and one green. She looked at Xiao Chen with a faint smile on her face. She raised her hand and took out a piece of light muslin from her bosom. She took out two hairpins and hung the long piece of muslin on her face, blocking Jing Yu's eyes. The black muslin fluttered and Jing Yu's strange eyes, which were hidden behind the muslin, flickered with a threatening luster. She was dressed in black and sat on the horse with her black hair fluttering in the wind. "Let's go." Jing Yu raised her head slightly and looked at Luan City in front of them as she said indifferently. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen's group rode their horses towards Luan City. The closer they got to Luan City, the stronger the smell of blood in the air. Jing Yu and her group could see Luan City more clearly as they got closer. Looking at the city in front of them, they realized that it looked like a black stone from afar. In fact, it wasn't. The city was dyed black by blood. Just how deep did the blood have to be to dye the city so red that it was black? Jing Yu stood in front of Luan City's gate and watched as the tightly shut gate slowly opened. A bloody smell wafted over, causing Jing Yu to frown slightly. She led her horse and slowly stepped into the city. However, a few people suddenly appeared and blocked her path. "You can't ride a horse in Luan City. If you want to ride a horse in, you have to pay 100 taels of silver." The leader of the group carried a broadsword and stared fiercely at Jing Yu and Xiao Chen's group as he spoke. "Ta." Jing Yu's lips curled into a disdainful smile when she heard this. She said, What if I don't pay and insist on riding a horse? Since you have come to our Luan city, you must abide by the rules of our Luan city. When the big man saw Jingyu refuse, not only did he not get angry, he even revealed a very excited smile. He licked his lips and his eyes were filled with a blazing light. Rules? Jingyu looked at the burly man expressionlessly, then went around him and continued forward. When the burly man saw Jingyu's actions, the bloodthirsty look in his eyes became even more intense. Without another word, he raised his sword and was about to chop down on Jingyu's horse. Swoosh. Almost in the blink of an eye, under the situation where no one could see clearly, a black shadow suddenly flashed by. The crowd of people who were lying at the city gate to watch the show widened their eyes in horror. Heh, you're courting death. Jingyu glanced expressionlessly at the large man whose eyes were filled with fear. She coldly spat out these words. The group of people walked past the few people blocking their way and calmly headed into the city. The people who heard the news stretched their necks one by one to look at the entrance. The person who had his back facing them finally fell to the ground with a loud bang under everyone's puzzled gaze. A red mark opened up on his neck and bright red blood flowed all over the ground. Hiss! The surrounding people looked at the few people who had fallen in an instant and widened their eyes. What a ruthless method! What a precise method! When the crowd saw Jingyu and Xiao Chen's group in the distance, their eyes revealed a grave expression. It seemed that another powerful person had entered Luan City. Some of the people who were standing at the city gate went forward to take a look at the few people's wounds and were speechless. Throw them out and bury them. The crowd raised their heads and looked in the direction that Jingyu and Xiao Chen had left. Chapter 842. It seems that this group of people will have a good life in Luan City. I have a feeling that Luan City, which has been peaceful for a long time, will be stirred up because of the arrival of these people. A faint voice sounded from the crowd. When everyone heard this, their faces became heated. The blood that had been hidden in their bodies for a long time started to churn and move. An indescribable aura spread throughout Luan City. This is Luan City? Jingyu raised her head slightly and looked at the surrounding scenery. There were many vendors on the streets, but most of them were selling herbs and weapons. Jingyu, Xiao Chen and the rest saw this scene along the way. The vendors started to fight because of a disagreement. Fighting and killing could be seen everywhere. It was so frightening. However, the people at the side seemed to be used to it. When they saw the people who were killed, they only glanced at them indifferently and then continued to do their own things. Yes, this is Luan City. Xiao Chen's pitch-black eyes flashed with a bloodthirsty coldness. His pair of cold eyes swept across the faces of people one by one. He reached out and grabbed Jingyu's waist. His entire body was emitting a strong killing aura. It was an invisible warning to everyone, announcing to everyone that Jingyu was his woman. Sure enough, after Xiao Chen made this move, the few malicious gazes in the crowd retracted. Jingyu naturally felt this scene and blinked her eyes in surprise. She did not expect these vicious people to abide by the so-called rules. Did you see it? Xiao Chen pursed his lips and said, "These are the rules of Luan City. If you want to adapt to this place and survive here, you have to follow the rules here." As Xiao Chen spoke, he glanced indifferently at the people in the crowd. The long sword in his hand was suddenly unsheathed. Under the shocked gazes of Jingyu and Shangguan Linglong, the long sword suddenly pierced through the chest of a man. This long sword actually avoided everyone and pierced through the chest of the last man. What a sharp sword technique! How dare you casually peep at my woman? Xiao Chen coldly walked towards the man and arrogantly pulled out the sword from the man's chest. The cold words he spat out caused the surrounding people who didn't know what was going on to widen their eyes. Fuck! So you didn't even allow anyone to look at your wife after bringing her out? Unreasonable. This was too unreasonable. When Jingyu heard Xiao Chen's words, she almost laughed out loud. When she saw Xiao Chen calmly walking back, the corners of Jingyu's mouth curled into a faint smile. She raised her head slightly, crossed her arms, and said, "Husband, you acted too quickly. You should have tortured him properly." "You're right, madam. I'll take note of that next time." When Xiao Chen heard Jing Yu's words, he unhurriedly sheathed the long sword in his hand. He once again held Jing Yu's waist and calmly continued to walk forward. However, when Jing Yu and Xiao Chen walked for a short distance, a man suddenly jumped out and stood in front of Xiao Chen and Jing Yu, blocking their path. This action caused Xiao Chen and the rest to frown slightly. "What's the matter?" Xiao Chen coldly asked. "I'm looking for this young lady." When the man heard Xiao Chen's question, his face turned slightly pale. He vaguely glanced at Jing Yu before his gaze finally landed on Shangguan Linglan, who was standing beside Jing Yu. Chapter 843. Shangguan Linglan furrowed her brows in confusion. She sized up the man in front of her and furrowed her brows tightly. Did she know this person? "Lady, I am the tyrant of Qingshui Street. Since you are new here and don't know the rules of Luan City, why don't you be my woman? I can guarantee your safety." That man puffed out his chest and stared at Shangguan Linglan with a devious gaze. This caused Shangguan Linglan's expression to change drastically. Tisk! Before Shangguan Linglan's anger could rise, a long sword suddenly pierced his chest. That man didn't even have the time to speak before his eyes widened abruptly. His face was filled with disbelief as he slowly raised his head. "Do." That man extended his trembling hand and pointed at Xing Er, who was holding onto the hilt of the sword. His eyes were wide open and he looked as though he had died with a grievance. "Are your dog eyes blind? How dare you touch my woman?" Xing Er's face was filled with viciousness as he coldly pulled the long sword out of that man's chest. Bang! After Xing Er finished speaking, that man's eyes widened even more. Jing Yu, who was standing by the side, could feel the intense regret that this man emitted at the last moment. The loud sound of him falling to the ground caused a temporary silence to appear on the bustling street. At this moment, everyone looked at Jing Yu and Xiao Chen with a different gaze. They had just entered the city for a few minutes and they had already killed 5 to 6 people. Furthermore, their actions were so ruthless. This technique was obvious to everyone. It seemed that this time around, there was indeed an impressive person who had entered Luan City. Xiao Chen, Jing Yu and the rest looked at the corpse coldly before stepping over it without any change in expression. The surrounding spectators twitched their mouths and looked at Xing Er and Xiao Chen. Regardless of whether it was their attire or their actions, it was clear that Xing Er was just a guard and Xiao Chen was the master. However, why was that lady standing in a row with the mistress of the master? Anyone who saw this would think that the lady was single. Xing Er's actions just now simply made everyone want to cry, but no tears came out. His words and actions were clean and efficient. Indeed, like master, like subordinate. He simply didn't let anyone live. Xing Er, very handsome. Jing Yu silently gave Xing Er a thumbs up. Xing Er silently lowered his head and there was a faint blush on his face. Shangguan Linglan walked for a while before he suddenly realized what Xing Er had just said. Haha. Jing Yu giggled as she pulled Shangguan Linglan's hand and said, "Xing Er, what you just said will cause misunderstandings. Our Linglan is still a virgin. Aren't you ruining her reputation by saying that?" Xing Er turned to look at Shangguan Linglan and didn't reply. Jing Yu. Upon hearing Jing Yu's words, Shangguan Linglan's heart suddenly thumped wildly. An unfamiliar emotion seemed to be uncontrollable and suddenly appeared in his heart. Shangguan Linglan hurriedly raised his hand to grab Jing Yu's hand. Just now was just a tactic to deal with the enemy. Don't take it seriously. Shangguan Linglan suspiciously blushed. For some reason, at this moment, Shangguan Linglan suddenly didn't dare to look at Xing Er. He bit his lip and tugged at Jing Yu as he said, "Besides, there are no outsiders here. Don't take it to heart." Chapter 844. How can I not care? Of course I care. Jing Yu quickly jumped up and said seriously, "Our Xing Er is definitely not an irresponsible person, right? Look at this. If he slept with Linglan, no one would dare to marry her in the future. I'll marry her." Just as Jing Yu finished speaking and was about to say something, Xing Er suddenly stopped in his tracks and calmly spat out 2 words. Shangguan Linglan and Jing Yu were so shocked that their eyes widened. Jing Yu couldn't turn her tongue in time and almost bit it. What did you say? Jing Yu stared at Xing Er in shock. Madam, I'm willing to marry her, but she might not be willing to marry me. Second Xing spoke clearly this time, shocking Jing Yu and Shangguan Linglan to the point that they were completely dumbfounded. Xiao Chen, on the other hand, revealed an expression that said, "This child is worth teaching," as if he was quite satisfied with Second Xing's current performance. What the hell are you satisfied with? This was a matter of marriage. Jing Yu suddenly pulled Shangguan Linglan behind her with a serious look on her face. She looked at Xing Er with a serious expression and said, "Xing Er, I'm not joking with you. If you're serious, then please think carefully before saying this. You have to bear a lot of responsibility." Xing Er frowned slightly when he heard this. He lifted his head and looked at Jing Yu. He seemed to be carefully analyzing Jing Yu's words. As for Linglan, I'll leave it to you. Jing Yu silently held her forehead and said, "I believe that you're very smart. It'll be fine as long as you know what you're feeling." Shangguan Linglan lowered her head slightly and didn't say anything. Jing Yu happily held Xiao Chen's hand and looked at Xiao Chen curiously. She said, "After all this, I suddenly remembered how I fell in love with you in the first place. I even married you so easily." Xiao Chen's face darkened slightly when he heard this. "You didn't even chase me," Jing Yu said indignantly. "Then I'll chase you now. You can run." When Xiao Chen heard Jing Yu's words, he silently let go of Jing Yu's hand and stopped in his tracks. Jing Yu's face darkened. She dragged Xiao Chen forward and said unhappily, "Run your head. Hurry up and find General Shangguan and Miaoqiu. I don't even know where they've been sent. Let's find a tea house and ask around." Xiao Chen calmly raised his eyebrows as he said this. "Then what are we dawdling for? Let's go, let's go." Jing Yu dragged Xiao Chen forward. The corner of Xiao Chen's mouth twitched. Was the person dawdling just now really him? Jing Yu and the others looked around for the nearest tea house. It seemed that the heavens were deliberately preventing them from finding General Shangguan and Lu Miaoqiu. Jing Yu, Xiao Chen, and the others had just walked down a street and were about to turn back. Suddenly, the street became restless. Countless people rushed in from the other side of the street. In the blink of an eye, Jing Yu and Xiao Chen's path was blocked. Jing Yu frowned slightly. "Boss, these are the people who just entered the city. They killed Brother Buckteeth." A small and skinny man stood next to a large and muscular man. The contrast between the two was definitely a visual impact. It was like a bamboo pole standing next to a water tank. This contrast made Jing Yu and the others widen their eyes. The fat and muscular man snorted coldly. He was holding something that looked like a spiked ball in his hand. Chapter 845. That was the mutated version of the mace? Jing Yu's mouth twitched violently as she frowned slightly at the group of people in front of her. Buckteeth took a fancy to this woman? The burly man raised the hammer in his hand and pointed the stick in his hand at Jing Yu. He tilted his head and looked at the skinny man beside him who looked like a bamboo pole. Boss, Buckteeth took a fancy to that one." The skinny man shook his head repeatedly and pointed at Shangguan Linglan. The man turned his head and looked at Shangguan Linglan. He nodded and said, "She's not bad looking, but it's a pity that she's someone else's wife. Buckteeth is also an idiot. He doesn't understand what's going on." "Boss." The skinny man looked like he was about to cry when he heard that. The muscular man snorted coldly and raised the hammer in his hand. He looked arrogantly at Jing Yu and the group and shouted, "Do you know who I am? Let me tell you, there's no one in Luan City who doesn't know me. Qingshui Street's Tsingxiajian. The entire Qingshui Street is mine. You just entered the city and you dare to kill my subordinates." The man was so agitated that Jing Yu was shocked to see that everyone's stomachs were shaking as they spoke. The corner of Jing Yu's mouth twitched violently. "He was the one who coveted my woman first." Second interrogation officer calmly took a step forward and looked at the large group of people in front of him with a cold expression as he spoke. The way he said, "my woman," was so smooth that Shangguan Linglong, who was at the side, blushed inexplicably when she heard this. I'm from Qingshui Street. What's wrong with asking a woman that I took a fancy to? How dare you kill him without distinguishing between right and wrong? Aren't you too arrogant? The fat man named Xing Xiaojin frowned and shouted coldly. Xing Er frowned when he heard that and his expression turned cold. So what if I killed him? While Xing Er was silent, Jing Yu suddenly stepped forward and stood in front of Xing Er. She looked coldly at Xing Xiaojin and said, "So what if we are arrogant?" When Xing Xiaojin saw Jing Yu walk out, his eyes lit up and he laughed loudly. "Ha! What a big tone! What a load of nonsense!" Jing Yu crossed her arms and looked at the group of people. She said, "You just want to avenge that man with buck teeth, right? Come at me." "You misunderstood." Xing Xiaojin laughed heartily and waved his hand. "I'm here this time to make friends with the few of you. I can see that the few of you have extraordinary martial arts and you're weak in Luan City. Why don't you join Qingshui Street?" "What did you say? Join Qingshui Street?" Jing Yu was confused when she heard that. She looked at Xing Xiaojin strangely and coughed slightly. She said, "All right then, give me a brief introduction of the specialties of Qingshui Street." "Specialties?" Xing Xiaojin was confused when he heard Jing Yu's question. He blinked and looked at the skinny man. He asked, "What specialties?" "What?" The skinny man was also confused when he heard that. He scratched his head and said, "The men of Qingshui Street are the bravest." "That's right, the bravest. There are only men in Qingshui Street, no women." "That's right, no women." Everyone opened their mouths to agree, but as soon as they opened their mouths, they realized that something was wrong. Xing Xiaojian's face immediately darkened, and he lifted his leg to kick the skinny man's butt. The man screamed in pain and rolled away, causing everyone to laugh. Chapter 846. Bastard, what kind of bastard are you saying? Xing Xiaojin scolded fiercely. "Boss, didn't you ask me to say it?" The man who had been kicked to the ground raised his hand to rub his but as he looked at Xing Xiaojin with a resentful look. That gaze made Jing Yu widen her eyes abruptly as she looked at the two people in a different light. Cough cough. Jing Yu coughed silently and looked at the two of them with a smile. "You guys should keep Qingshui Street for yourselves. We won't disturb the two of you flirting anymore. We'll take our leave first." Jing Yu waved her hand and turned to walk around Xing Xiaojin's group. However, Jing Yu pulled Xiao Qin and took a step forward. Suddenly, a mace appeared in front of them and blocked their path, stopping them in their tracks. "Guys, isn't it a little unreasonable for you to leave so easily?" Xing Xiaojin sneered at Jing Yu's group. "Heh!" Jing Yu was amused. She looked up at Xiao Qin and said, "Since they're asking for death, why don't we help them?" Xiao Qin patted Jing Yu's head and his dark eyes were filled with love. Jing Yu's lips curled up and she straightened her back. She was about to give the order heroically, but just as she opened her mouth, Shangguan Linglong, who was beside Jing Yu, rushed out. The sword in his hand flew and he didn't say a word. He raised his hand and started killing. Since Shangguan Linglong had already rushed out, Xing Er was no exception. His dark figure flashed and appeared beside Shanghai Linglong. It looked like he was killing people, but in reality, his eyes were focused on Shanghai Linglong's safety and he was protecting Shanghai Linglong. "Hey, I haven't said anything yet." Jing Yu cursed gloomily. However, the battle had already started. Who would care about Jing Yu? This made Jing Yu extremely indignant. She raised her hand and pulled out the dagger at her waist. Her petite body shuttled through the crowd like a swimming dragon. To be a qualified assassin, she would stab someone once or twice from time to time. The feeling of being able to stab someone in the back was simply too satisfying. Shangguan Linglong still needed Jing Yu's help occasionally. As for Xiao Qin and Xing Er, this was like chopping a watermelon, right? Jing Yu's face was filled with black lines as she watched the head roll on the ground like a watermelon. Her mouth twitched violently. "All of you, fucking attack." Xing Xiaojin didn't expect Jing Yu and Xiao Chen's group to start killing people without any explanation. They were still talking in a friendly manner a second ago. Moreover, this killing was completely one-sided. The people who died were all his subordinates. At this moment, Seng Xiaojian's intestines turned green with regret. He had more than 100 people. When he heard from his subordinates that there were only 2 men with strong martial arts and 2 weak women, he was filled with joy. Wasn't it just 2 men? No matter how strong they were, how could they defeat so many people on Qingshui Street? He wanted to persuade them nicely and recruit them. If they weren't willing, he would use force and beat them half to death. Would he be afraid that they wouldn't listen? It had to be said that Seng Xiaojian's plan was quite good. However, reality proved that it was useless to just think about it. Who would have thought that these 2 legendary women's martial arts weren't weak at all? Chapter 847. Damn it. Let's go. Seng Xiaojian was completely enraged. Seeing his subordinates being killed like this, no one could hold back. He looked at Xiao Chen and Jing Yu with a cold gaze. Among so many people, Jing Yu's martial arts seemed to be the worst. But because Jing Yu was simply slacking off. She didn't kill seriously at all. She jumped up and down as if she was having fun. If Seng Xiaojian had observed carefully, he would have realized how terrifying Jing Yu was. She didn't make a move, but once she made a move, there would be no injuries. This was the true portrayal of an assassin. When Jing Yu killed people, she didn't use her murderous aura. You couldn't feel her murderous aura. You just watched as Jing Yu seemed to be having fun. She was laughing and jumping. The way she killed people seemed to be soft and fluffy. It also seemed as if she had been bumped into by someone and accidentally stabbed the dagger in her hand. In fact, all of this was precisely calculated by Jing Yu. If she hadn't calculated, how could she have been so careless? Unfortunately, Seng Xiaojian didn't think about it carefully. Therefore, he made a decision that he would regret until he died. That was to sneak an attack on Jing Yu. As long as he captured Jing Yu, they would stop and he would have a bargaining chip. Seng Xiaojian's eyes lit up as he thought of this. His eyes were full of light as he stared at Jing Yu with a burning gaze. Under the cover of the crowd, he approached Jing Yu step by step. At this moment, Jing Yu was having a lot of fun. In the past, she only killed for the sake of killing. When she didn't kill for the sake of killing, the feeling in her heart became different. That kind of relaxed and lively feeling that seemed to make her happy reverberated in her heart. She was still killing people, but she could no longer feel the murderous aura. It wasn't that the murderous aura didn't exist. It was just that Jing Yu had assimilated it into a rather interesting emotion. This feeling was very strange, but it made Jing Yu feel very comfortable. Jing Yu was experimenting again and again. Why did she have this kind of mentality? She was indeed thinking of killing people, but she didn't have the intention to kill. Jing Yu's moving body stopped. She looked in the direction of Xiao Chen and Xing Er and watched their actions. Xiao Chen was indifferent. It was as if he didn't care about any life. He was like a giant standing in the sky, overlooking these ants, and could trample them to death with a lift of his feet. Xing Er was also indifferent. Xing Er was more like a kind of rigid aura. He was like an assassin who knew the art of freezing. Every stab of his sword was bone-chilling. These 2 kinds of indifference were different. Jing Yu looked at Shangguan Linglan again. If Xing Er was ice, then Shangguan Linglan was a raging fire. Every move of his naturally carried a kind of raging wave. It was incomparably mighty as it smashed towards that person. He was like a majestic lion in the midst of raging flames, mighty and passionate. This feeling was really too interesting. Jing Yu was so engrossed in observing Xiao Chen and the other 2 that she didn't notice the figure behind her approaching step by step. That burly figure approached Jing Yu with a gloomy expression. Xiao Chen turned around and killed a person. When he turned around, he saw this thrilling scene. He didn't even have to think about it. The long sword in his hand suddenly flew straight toward Jing Yu like a gust of wind. The moment Xiao Chen's long sword flew out, Jing Yu suddenly turned around. The dagger in her hand was like lightning, ruthlessly stabbing into the man's heart. Xiao Chen's long sword flew past Jing Yu's ear and instantly cut open her artery. Chapter 848. Tisk. There were clearly 2 daggers and 2 wounds, but because they were so perfectly synchronized, only one sound could be heard. Ha! Zheng Xiaojian's eyes widened. The mace he had just raised didn't even have time to fall before he was killed in an instant. The moment Jing Yu's dagger pierced through, Xiao Chen's long sword accidentally cut off the hanging gauze beside Jing Yu's ear. The woman holding the dagger slowly raised her head. A pair of different colored eyes were exposed in front of Zheng Xiaojian. The pair of eyes, one gold and one green, were so beautiful that Zheng Xiaojian's eyes widened in disbelief. I've been discovered. Jing Yu's eyelids drooped slightly as she watched the veil slowly float down. Her pair of different colored eyes flickered slightly, and the curled corners of her lips seemed to carry an incomparably seductive expression. Ha ha! Zheng Xiaojian seemed like he still wanted to say something, but at this moment, he couldn't make a single sound. The vitality in his body was fading away. Jing Yu coldly and slowly pulled out the dagger and watched Zheng Xiaojian slowly fall backward. As Zheng Xiaojian's body fell, Jing Yu, who was blocked by the dagger, was completely exposed in front of everyone. The people who were originally waving their weapons all stopped what they were doing at this moment. Everyone stared blankly at Jing Yu, the woman in black with different colored eyes. At this moment, everyone held their breaths and stood motionless as they stared at the woman with different colored eyes in disbelief. Ah! Jing Yu chuckled softly as the colors in her eyes flickered slightly. Under everyone's horrified gaze, the originally golden and green eyes instantly turned golden. It was a golden color that was as bright as the scorching sun. Different colored eyes. It's different colored eyes. Suddenly, an extremely excited voice rang out, waking everyone up with a start. The eyes that were originally looking at Jing Yu with fear were instantly filled with passion. The pair of fiery eyes that were looking at Jing Yu were like searchlights, as if they couldn't wait to see through her. Different colored eyes. It's actually a woman with different colored eyes. Could she be the 9th imperial concubine? Countless whispers rang out in the crowd. If that's the case, then isn't that man the 9th Empress? When the name 9th Empress rang out, the crowd fell silent once again. Everyone looked at Xiao Chen with eyes filled with fear, as if they were swallowing their saliva in fear. I heard that the only person who was able to walk out of Luan City unscathed from the Black Soil region was the 9th Empress, Xiao Chen, right? Jing Yu was just thinking that Xiao Chen's reputation could even be heard in such a chaotic Luan City. In the blink of an eye, she heard these words and instantly frowned. At that time, the 9th Empress was only 13 or 14 years old, right? Another voice said with a hint of fear. Sims, that's right. When these 2 sentences were said, everyone's expression instantly changed. Everyone turned their heads to look at Xiao Chen with a different gaze. They silently swallowed their saliva and once again looked at Jing Yu. Jing Yu could instantly feel that after these 2 sentences were said, the fiery gazes that were looking at her seemed to have lessened by a lot. Everyone opened their eyes to look at Jing Yu, as if their eyes were filled with conflict. And this conflict was actually because of Xiao Chen. When Jing Yu thought of this, she was instantly conflicted. Chapter 849. Xiao Chen strode towards Jing Yu and raised his hand to support Jing Yu's cheek. He frowned and asked, "Are you hurt anywhere?" "I'm fine." Jing Yu raised her head and smiled at Xiao Chen. "Jing Yu." Shengguan Linglan also walked over quickly. He glanced at Zheng Xiaojian's corpse on the ground and heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Jing Yu was unharmed. He frowned and scolded, "What's wrong with you? How dare you be distracted when you're killing someone?" I forgot." Jing Yu scratched her head and said, "Don't I still have you guys? I'm not worried." "You only know how to talk nonsense." Shengguan Linglan raised her hand and hit Jing Yu, a faint smile appearing in her eyes. Xiao Chen saw that Jing Yu was fine and raised his head to pull out the sword that was stuck in the ground. He looked at Zheng Xiaojian's subordinates and asked, "Do you guys still want to fight?" His calm voice was filled with endless pressure as he looked at them coldly. "No more." The scary man's legs trembled and his mouth twitched. He waved his hand and said, No, no more fighting, their boss was already dead. Who would want to fight? Furthermore, when they saw Jing Yu's strange eyes and thought of Xiao Chen's identity, they immediately extinguished any desire to continue fighting. Then, can we go now? Jing Yu calmly crossed her arms and asked these people. Of course. Everyone took a step back and opened up a path for them. They watched as Jing Yu and Xiao Chen swaggered past them. They felt that it was a pity. They saw the strange eyes but didn't have the guts to snatch it. The fight just now was clearly seen by everyone. The martial arts of these four people were incomparably good. A small gang like Qingshui Street with hundreds of people couldn't take them down. There were many gangs, but there were only so many people. They were all mortal enemies. Who would form an alliance? That was simply nonsense. Looking at the situation, it seemed that only a few big shots in Luan City had the ability to take down these four people. However, that wasn't a good thing either. One must know that there was more than one tycoon in Luan City. It seemed that Luan City wouldn't be peaceful anymore. Everyone thought of this matter and their eyes lit up. If they could get a share of the loot while fighting for the other pupil, then that would be amazing. With that thought, these people who had nothing to do and weren't willing to join any factions started to get restless. They were hoping that these big shots would fight until both sides suffered losses and they would be the oriole behind the mantis stalking the cicada. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen walked away peacefully. Jing Yu's golden eyes swept across everyone's line of sight. Everyone who was seen by Jing Yu trembled in excitement. The swords in their hands seemed to be letting out cries of desire. However, the owner of the sword knew that he couldn't move at all. He raised his hand and pressed down on the sword. A pair of fiery eyes watched Jing Yu and Xiao Chen leave. How fun! Jing Yu's lips curled into a faint smile. She said, "These people can actually resist coming forward to fight. I thought that we were about to start a massacre." Soon, Xiao Chen held Jing Yu's hand tightly and looked at Jing Yu. He asked, "Are you afraid?" Chapter 850. Scared. Jing Yu smiled faintly. She turned to look at Xiao Chen and said, "Xiao Chen, if you see the other me, I wonder if you'll be scared to death?" "Pa, the other you?" Xiao Chen frowned slightly, and his eyes flickered. "You'll see it very soon." Jing Yu turned back and said faintly, "Look, we've arrived at the tea house. Let's go in and ask." Jing Yu didn't give Xiao Chen a chance to ask as she pulled Xiao Chen inside. Before they even reached the tea house, Jing Yu heard the words newcomer, murderer, Qingshui Street, Tsingxiajinu, abnormal pupils, 9 emperors, and so on. Jing Yu had to admit that the speed at which news spread was really fast. Jing Yu, Xiao Chen, and the others stepped into the tea house. Everyone turned to look, and the people at the tables closest to the entrance suddenly fell silent. The people beside them also followed their gazes. Just like that, one after another, the entire tea house fell silent. It was so quiet that it was eerie. "Hey, the premium hot tea is here." The extremely busy waiter was carrying a tray of hot tea as he walked out of the backyard with a smile on his face. However, he suddenly realized that the tea house was strangely quiet. Immediately, a smile appeared on his face as he followed everyone's gaze to the door with a strange expression. Almost at the instant he looked over, there was no one in his eyes except for that pair of golden eyes. Clang! The tray in the waiter's hand fell to the ground, shocking everyone in the hall back to their senses. They all gasped and looked at Jing Yu with fear in their eyes. It really was abnormal pupils. It was one thing to hear about it, but it was another thing to see it with your own eyes. "Waiter, you dropped your tea." The corners of Jing Yu's mouth curled up slightly. She looked at the shocked waiter and said with a smile, "Oh." The waiter hurriedly lowered his head to pick up the teapot. Jing Yu could clearly see that the waiter's hands were trembling as he picked up the teapot. Jing Yu raised her brows slightly. Was she really that scary? Jing Yu looked around and saw that everyone was avoiding her gaze. Her lips curled into a faint smile as she said, "Everyone here, we'd like to ask some questions. Is anyone willing to give us the honor of answering?" Jing Yu said as she looked at Xiao Chen. Her face clearly said, Xiao Chen, I have no money. Xiao Chen's face darkened when he saw Jing Yu's expression. He took off his money pouch expressionlessly, opened it, and poured out the pouch of gold leaves on the table in front of him. The glittering gold leaves were revealed to everyone's eyes just like that. Jing Yu's eyes widened and she turned to look at Xiao Chen with a dumbfounded expression. Big brother, I asked you to take out the money, not all of it. If anyone can give me the information, all of this will belong to them. Xiao Chen said expressionlessly. Jing Yu looked at the pile of gold leaves with a pained expression and the corners of her mouth twitched. Money makes the world go round. No matter where you are, as long as you need to live, you must use money. The moment the golden leaves were poured out, everyone's eyes widened. Their eyes were drooling as they looked at the table. Their eyes were burning with desire. Chapter 851. These two must be the famous 9th Emperor's and 9th Imperial concubine, right? One of the men with a full beard laughed as he looked at Xiao Chen and Jing Yu. If you two have any questions, please ask. For the sake of this golden leaf, we will definitely do our best to answer. Hee hee. Jing Yu smiled and asked, I heard that a group of people were sent to Luan City a few days ago. When Jing Yu said this, she paused for a moment. She narrowed her eyes and looked around, paying attention to everyone's expression. Then, she opened her mouth and said in an incomparably slow manner, Does anyone here know where the person who was sent here was sent to? Jing Yu's words made everyone in the tea house frown. 7 or 8 days ago. Jing Yu narrowed her eyes and added, They were sent from the Tokyo Imperial City. Does anyone know? Could it be those people? Finally, after Jing Yu finished speaking, a cautious and uncertain voice sounded from the crowd. Jing Yu's sharp ears heard it and her eyes widened. She turned to look at the person who spoke. The one who spoke was a skinny man with delicate features. Among so many dark-skinned burly men, Jing Yu was stunned for a moment when she saw such a delicate and delicate-looking man. You know? Jing Yu's eyes lit up as she asked. But. The man probably didn't expect Jing Yu to suddenly ask him a question. He was so nervous that he started to tremble. He looked at Jing Yu with a pale face and couldn't speak for a long time. You know? What did you just say? Which group of people? Were they? Shangguan Linglan looked at the man excitedly and asked. But. The man became even more frightened after being yelled at by Shangguan Linglan. His frightened appearance and his silence made Jing Yu frown. Speak slowly. If you say something wrong, I won't beat you or kill you. Jing Yu's golden eyes flashed slightly. She pursed her lips and narrowed her eyes at the man in front of her. When Jing Yu's words fell, the man's frightened expression finally eased a little. They were sent to the Southeast Prefecture after they were registered. They could leave. The man swallowed and said, If you want to find them, you have to go to the Southeast Prefecture and ask. But I don't think you'll be able to find them. The people of the Southeast Prefecture are at this point, the man suddenly stopped talking, as if he had a bone-deep fear of the Southeast Prefecture. His behavior made Jing Yu frown slightly. She turned to look at Xiao Chen, a dignified look flashing in her eyes. Here, let's go. Xiao Chen grabbed Jing Yu's hand and turned to leave. After walking out of the tea house, Jing Yu turned to look at Xiao Chen in confusion and asked, Xiao Chen, you know about the Southeast Prefecture? Xiao Chen replied coldly. His stiff expression made Jing Yu slightly stunned. She seemed to be puzzled. When Xiao Chen heard about the Southeast Prefecture, his entire person seemed to change. The aura around him made people feel extremely oppressed. The sudden change in Xiao Chen made Jing Yu frown worriedly. She turned to look at Xing Er and found that Xing Er's face was also gloomy. Jing Yu was confused. What was going on? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.